emotional issues over the last 20 years through a combination of body work and acupuncture, and will offer some insight today for coping with mental health and wellness. She's a doctor of acupuncture and licensed massage therapist. She founded Relax Massage Therapy and Skincare in 2002, followed by the founding of Infinity Acupuncture in 2011, with locations in Wilmington and Hampstead. She's a resident of Hampstead, and she received her license in therapeutic massage in 2002 and her master's in acupuncture in 2011. Her doctorate in acupuncture in 2019. So we're really pleased, Gretchen, to have you join us. And what she didn't say to you is that she also won an award during our Intentional Collisions event as a woman business owner, given the successes that she has had in her business. So congratulations on that award as well. And also joining us, I hope, I thought he was on, and it looks like he might have dropped off, so hopefully he'll get back on, but I'll go ahead and introduce Joseph Rengifo, who's a licensed clinical mental health counselor and the owner of Wilmington Mental Health, founded in April of 2017. Joseph is from New York, and he holds 2 master's degrees, one in psychology and another in mental health counseling. He founded Wilmington Mental Health to fill the gap in mental health and addiction services our community experiences. He's an active volunteer in the fight against mental health stigma, and he's made it a mission to normalize mental health treatment to help the community understand that seeking help does not necessarily mean that we are abnormal. So I highly encourage us all to seek the help that we need. I will tell you, just to sort of set the stage today, if you were with us in August, you know I shared a little bit of my own personal story. Not that I haven't had my own mental health issues at other times in my life, and not sure I've always been smart enough about seeking the help. This year, though, the isolation that came with the pandemic really highlighted my own challenges with where my head was, and nothing was wrong except that I just felt anxious all the time, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I called my doctor, my general practitioner, and we had a great conversation, and he referred me to some other specialists in town who've helped me work through the anxiety that I was feeling in this time of isolation and this inability to be with people, which fills me. Being with all of you, our members, and helping you all connect to the people that you need to connect with really fills me up, and I wasn't getting filled up. So it was a rough time, and I still have moments of loneliness and anxiety, but again, it was affecting how I was thinking about everything. And so I'm grateful for what you all do in our community to help others. And so we're going to kick it off. We'll start, Franchon, with you. Could you describe what it is that you do for your clients?
I make Monday morning exciting again, or maybe for the first time. Some of us don't enjoy going to work. We struggle. We don't get along with our coworkers. We have issues with our supervisor. We're stressed about the bottom line, especially in a pandemic world. The anxiety and stress around almost everything is pretty high these days, much higher than normal. So what I do is go into the workplace and talk about what are the issues, what's going on, what's happening, and build relationships with people to kind of really get to the root of the problem. So a lot of times what a clinical, I won't say what other professionals do, what other professionals do is look at an individual and figure out, you know, what that individual needs and what interventions they need to help them. For me, I look at the entire organization. So what's happening in the system, what's happening from top to bottom, from the time they walk into the door and all of their actions while they're at work, and then to the time that they leave. During that time, which is really critical. A lot of us spend a lot of time at work. Even if we're at home at work, either way, we're still in that work environment. So I spend a lot of time just kind of figuring out what that is and then helping people solve, how do we make this a better environment? How do we make it a more productive, creative space, a safe space, so that Monday morning you're not like, oh, I have to go to work. My favorite feedback I've gotten is people saying like, I actually look forward to Monday morning. I'm like, yes, that's what we want. We want more of that.
Thank you, Franchon. That's awesome. And Dr. Rivas, can you share with us what you do for your clients? Unmute. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay. So what I do for my clients, and since we are discussing mental health mostly today, I mean, that's the focus. One of the things that Chinese medicine does is recognizing that there is no disconnect between physical, mental, and spiritual health. So one of the things we look at when people come in, because a lot of times people come in because they're having pain, but that pain is actually caused by emotional issues. And so the nice thing about Chinese medicine is that we're able to look at all of the issues that are going on with somebody and then determine how to help them with that. We do it in a way with acupuncture, and a lot of people are really afraid of, like, oh, I'm afraid of needles. And I try to remind people that acupuncture pins are not like the ones where you give blood. So 18 of mine will fit into one of these because ours are single, solid, and sterile, and they're only used one time. And by using those pins, we balance people's energy out. So people come in and they're like, well, kind of like I was when I got home today. You know, after driving behind a guy going 45 and 55 while he's on his phone the whole time, I was just like, get out of my way, I'm going to be late. So, but what happens is, working with the client, we take that person out of the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight that most of us stay in these days, especially the last, 8 months or so, and into what we call rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system. And by getting into that, that's that rest and healing state that some people like get into through meditation or whatever, but we balance the energetic so that your body can heal itself, because we're big believers in the fact that your body knows what to do. It just needs help remembering how. And that's what we do, is we balance you out so that your body can do the work that it's designed to do.
And Joseph, how are you? It's good to see you, and thank you for joining us today. I would love for you to share with our audience what it is you do for your clients.
So, hi, Franchon. I met Franchon before, so I have to say hi. So my approach is a little bit more traditional in that, is what people think of counseling. If you watch movies where a counselor sits down with a client or patient, we call them patient here. We somehow interact with them based on what they bring to the session. However, there are many ways of looking at therapy. You can have the typical person who lays down on a couch, which is like, the stereotypical way of providing counseling based on, the European Freudian approach to doing it. And then there is the person who sits down, kind of like, a client therapist type of relationship where they present a problem and you try to give them, solutions or tips or skills to develop, over the course of their treatment. And we have trainings like, cognitive behavioral therapy, for instance, and my background being more in the psychology area and arena than in the counseling arena, I integrate many of the counseling approaches to assist the individual, but more to provide solutions. So it's more of a rational approach rather than, based on their cognition, their cognitive abilities, and how they can challenge situations. So it's more providing solutions and building that skills repertoire they already bring, analyzing the things that they have done, how they have done them, and to what extent counseling can provide alternatives to that. And then, in the process, you kind of give them the opportunity to develop, goals. And then obviously every certain amount of time, every certain amount of months or weeks, you review what they have accomplished, what they have not, and then provide feedback and tell them, if you have accomplished already a goal, where can we go now? And so in that assistance, you cannot become the guide, the guidance. You also become the mentor. You become the coach. Like you have different roles in the process. I mean, I have people coming to me and asking me for legal advice, and it's like, oop, that's an arena. But we kind of have different hats during the session. Hey, okay, right now I'm a auto mechanic, and so on and so forth. So yeah, but we have that, and I've been watching, YouTube videos, and people say, well, our profession is kind of like one of the broadest in what we can actually do. And we can really define one single, approach or one single role that we play. But that's, I can say that I'm multitasking all the time. Yeah.
That's fantastic, Joseph. Thank you so much. I'm going to start with you for this next question. So for me, because I had physical feelings associated, so which caused me to call my GP. Tell me, if you could, what's the difference between what you do and then what what's considered traditional Western medicine, I guess? How does what you do differ from what my general practitioner was doing for me?
Most of the questions you probably will ask me, I'm going to kind of tell you this at the beginning. In counseling or psychology, traditional is a very difficult word because, traditional to us in the United States, it really doesn't really apply, because for the past 30 years, we have changed so much our views of what is traditional. But if you want me to give you an answer of, I would say, like in the 80s, 90s, you have the Erickson approach of behaviorism, where everything's about like we need to change behavior. Then you have the Canadian approach where Albert Bandura was talking about how we learn through imitation and socialization. You have the Aaron approach to counseling, where everything is about how we think and how we approach things based on thoughts. So if you want to know how I practice my counseling and how that differs from the traditional or the general way of doing it, I would say that I tend to integrate mindfulness. I'm not that big in that area because of my background in psychology, but I integrate that obviously because we have to meet the client where they are, and that's a big part of it. Trying to help them release stress, anxiety, the tension of the American society as a whole. We have also to integrate things that are more holistic, like medicine, and refer them to a medical provider if they have not considered that. I also like to help them see things more from a, emotionally focused. You have to process your emotions, but at the end of the day, they want solutions to some extent. So, even if it is a year later, at some point they're going to want solutions. So I try to cut that time and say, okay, let's go to solutions. But if they say, nope, I want to talk about my emotions for 12 months, let's do that. So basically, in how I differ, I would say that I'm adaptable, I'm moldable. I tell the person, tell me how I can help you, and instead of following a script, basically.
Great, thank you so much. Franchon, I'm going to ask you the same question. What's the difference between what you do and traditional Western medicine, so to speak?
So traditional Western medicine, in my opinion, focuses a lot on symptoms. And I completely agree with Joseph. There's a lot of scripting and a lot of kind of like, if then this kind of thing happening. And Healing Your Almond doesn't do that. Healing Your Almond says, for example, if the symptom is our call-off rate is really, really high. So I'm like, okay, that's a symptom. I cannot guarantee I can fix that. What I will do is spend time trying to figure out why your call-off rate is so high. Like, is it only happening when the manager? Is there a lot of personal issues going on with the people that are working with you? Is there what kind of people are you hiring in terms of like education? What is the process that they're going through? Like, what is the problem? Because that's not the problem. That's the problem that's happening with you, because then that means as an owner, you're getting called into work, which is absolutely crazy, right? Like, I've had people call me like, I'm an owner, I've owned this company for 10 years and I'm serving donuts today. That's an issue. And I'm like, okay. And in their mind, it's like, they'll call in me and say, can you get people to stop calling off? And it's like, no, I can't. But what I can do is help you figure out, why is your call-off rate so high? What are the reasons? So Healing Your Almond, what's the big difference is that we don't really spend a lot of time on symptoms. I want to hear about them. I'm listening for clues to understand better what's actually going on. But it's similar to kind of when you weed eat a garden and like people come in and they cut off the weeds, but they don't actually pull the roots ever. And then it just grows right back. What I've noticed is a lot of people, when they hire Healing Your Almond, it's because they've already been through the cutting off the top and nobody actually got to the root of the problem. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend a lot of time asking a lot of questions. I'm going to come to your place of work. I'm going to meet everybody. I'm going to hang out, just chill. Like for some of my employees, I will just go and show up. I do 1:00 a.m. show ups. I work for agencies, contract with agencies that are open 24 hours. So I just show up 1:00 in the morning in jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm hanging out. I'm walking around. I'm talking to people. I'm getting a real true understanding of what is happening in your work environment because I'm going to look at it differently than what other people are looking at it for. Like, I'm not looking for safety in terms of trip hazards. You know, there are specialists that do that. I'm looking for what happens when people walk to the door. Do they smile? Do they not smile? Are they looking for the exit? Do they talk to somebody? What kind of interactions are they having with people? Because we need to do some adjustments so that work becomes a place you at least mildly want to be, as opposed to a place that you get a sick feeling in your stomach when 3 o'clock rolls around, because that's your clock in time. Mm-hmm. So what I do is a very systems environmental approach. It's very different from the Western medicine of like, hey, you have this symptom, we're going to treat this symptom. The problem is going to continue, and the way we treat the symptom may or may not cause another problem. So healing your almond doesn't do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Franchon. We appreciate you. I love that. I love the focus that I love the way you paint that picture, not focus on the symptoms, understand what they are. So Gretchen, your turn. And you already told us that you practice Chinese medicine. so talk to us a little bit about how that's different from traditional Western medicine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have Megan put the slide up, because I feel like visuals are really helpful especially when we're talking about the mental health. So in Chinese medicine, there are 5 phases that the body, every person has, and there's a season for each one. So wood is mostly encompasses, the phase of wood is the season of spring, but it's also the emotion of anger, and it affects like the liver and the gallbladder, but it also has to do with your eyes and your muscles and anything that has to do with movement in the body, because the cosmic force that goes with wood is wind. And, you know, Western medicine doesn't recognize wind. The other things that we deal with, they do recognize, but in a different way. So for an example, I have a patient I've been working with, and he's had all these different migrating pains. You know, he has back spasms, and he has this sensation of things not moving down through his middle, and just pain and that migrates and moves all over, and then jaw pain and like pain that starts right here at the eyes. And all of his stuff has to do with the gallbladder, liver. And we kind of nailed it the other day. We figured out, you know what it is he has all this anger. Because COVID has destroyed his business, like, you know, destroyed all of it, you know, $5 million worth of business just gone. And he's having to like put up this really happy face with his family, like everything's going to be okay. But inside he's been seething. And so that has just manifested throughout his body. And so when we treated him the other day, instead of like chasing the pain, we're like, we need to work on the emotional aspect of things. We need to help you get rid of your anger and focus on how to process this. You know, I told him, like, you know, get the boxing gloves out and work on your, you know, speed bag or something like that. But recognizing that the different emotions go and affect the body differently is one of the biggest differences we have. I think Western medicine is starting to move towards the fact that there's a connection between mental and physical health, but they're still really not anywhere close to where they need to be. And then if you go to the fire phase, so fire is responsible for joy and laughter, but also if it's out of balance, it can be too excited, you know, overexcitement, too much laughter, inappropriateness, or, you know, the opposite of no joy. And then earth is that worry, is the stomach and the spleen. And if you think about it, if you worry all the time and everything's kind of churning, your gut churns and all this stuff happens and you can't sleep at night because it's just like twirling in your head. And so then from there you go to metal, and metal phase has to do with the lungs and large intestine. And so think about it, if you're really sad or if you're struggling with grief, you can often get stuck digestively. And I remember when I was in school, we treated a lady who came in for treatment, and she had been grieving for her mother who had died like 9 months before that. But she said it was like it just happened yesterday. And she was stuck in this pattern of grief that she could not get out of. So we gave her a treatment that helped move that emotion through. And when she came in the next month and I saw her, she's like, I don't know what you did, but I feel like I'm grieving normally now. She's like, I'm sad and I still cry, but it's not like it just happened yesterday. And that was one of my first experiences with really the power of acupuncture with helping move the emotions through when people are feeling really stuck. And then the one that everybody's really dealing with a lot now is the water phase, because water is fear and anxiety. And just this it kind of combines with worry, and all this stuff's going on. So a lot of times when you're looking at the water phase, it's not only the kidneys, but the bladder, but the adrenals and your endocrine system and your reproductive system and your head hair. So I have a patient that I spoke with recently, all this, she's thinking all these different things are wrong with her when actually it's all from the water phase. Her hair was falling out, she was stressed out, and her adrenals were tanking, and she couldn't function very well. And I'm like, you don't really have 10 things wrong with you. You have one thing wrong with you with 10 different symptoms. So there's that way of looking at it that's different. And I see that so often when patients come in, from a Western perspective, they would need to see 5 different doctors for what, all these different symptoms they have. But really, they just have a deficiency in this energetic, or a depletion of it because of constant stress or worry or anger. And if we can get those emotions balanced out for them, then all of a sudden they feel better, because each one of these feeds on the next. But what's not showing in this particular chart is there's also a control cycle within that looks like a star. So like water controls fire, because think about water puts out fire, and fire controls metal because, it will melt metal. And then metal cuts wood, wood is, it goes over to earth. So there's also a check and balance system within all this. And so we want to look at all of that when somebody comes in and figure out what's really going on. Because for a lot of people, stuff has been simmering since they were a child. They have stuff that's like gone on for decades. And when we get to the root cause of all that and start working on what's really happening, then we can really change things and make a difference. And it's pretty amazing to see what happens when people come in. I was thinking about what you said, Natalie, and I thought, oh, if you could only have come in for a treatment when you were feeling all that, I could have fixed you in no time.
Well, and he made some recommendations for some non-traditional ways that I could get to a better place. But so we have a question from our attendees, and it's our good friend Bo Dean, who works for New Hanover County. He's a great guy. He's asking if you all accept traditional insurance, Medicare, flex accounts, or HSAs, because being able to access care is really important, and whether those resources can be used is important. So if you guys, why don't we, Franchon, we'll start with you again. You can answer whether you take any of those payments. And I know you do less work with individuals, but share with us how that works.
Yeah, so I actually am not accepting any individual clients unless there is some extenuating circumstances. I am paneled with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicaid. I'm paneled with a lot of people, and I do occasionally take on an individual client, again, extenuating circumstances because I'm a trauma specialist. But generally speaking, at this point, I am not accepting any individual clients. So the way that you would get my services is if that entire organization did a contract with Healing or Almond, then that means all employees will then have access to me. And it kind of comes as a bundled deal, which actually ends up being cheaper than if you were to pay out of pocket for insurance. But it's a weird, so the way you can get to me is through an organization, unless like I said, there's a specialty case that somebody wants to plead to me. And occasionally I will accept them, but it's just, there's a lot of, there's more need really than there is providers, but there's other providers other than me. So
yeah, great. Thank you. Joseph, what's your answer on that question?
EAP is one option. So some employers offer that. So if you have an employee assistance, you can call and then somehow see where one of the available providers. And that way you're not limited to us. But if you want to go specifically with us, we can take Blue Cross, United, Aetna, Cigna, Magellan, MedCost, Humana, and a bunch of other ones. But obviously we take cash, we take credit cards, and people sometimes pay with the HSA cards, but we don't take Medicaid and Medicare. And some insurances like the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan through the aftermarket, that one is limited. We're not able to take that one. The Blue Value.
Thank you. Thank you. Gretchen?
Well, y'all can probably guess the insurance is not covering acupuncture. In some cases, in some areas, in some states, and they actually cover it well, and it's very helpful for people, but not really in North Carolina. There are some plans that say they cover it, but they don't really pay enough to make it a viable thing for us to be able to take. So if your plan does, you can do as an out-of-network provider, and we can give you a super bill. But we do take HSA and flex accounts, and then like Joseph was saying, you know, cash and cards too. But yeah, it's not a well-covered thing yet through insurance. And it's probably actually a good thing, because they want to pay like nothing. And we spend more time with the patient than a doctor does, like 10 times more time. And then they want to pay us 10 times less. So it's just not really financially a feasible thing for a business owner to do. Gotcha. Which is sad.
Thank you. Yeah, I do wonder, and you, one or all of you have referenced sort of a transition in that traditional Western medicine world to preventative care and to wellness and a real understanding. I do wonder if in the future the non-traditional things might get a little bit more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, that whole preventative, they become more of a preventative plan to prevent people from needing the costly healthcare that we've become accustomed to going straight to.
Well, when America's ready to switch to that, it's going to take a long time, because America's thought process on healthcare still is wait until I'm really, really sick, and then I'll go get a pill or something to fix me. And there's more and more people are, I think, focusing on, because if you look at the numbers of and the amount of money that people are spending on I don't like using the word alternative, but different types of things outside of the standard Western model, it's in the billions. I mean, people spend a lot of money to try to get and stay well. So the mindset is shifting, but the American medical model is not. It's still a get sick and, you know, treatment model, which is, that's why it costs so much, which is really sad.
Yeah, sure.
There's a movement toward preventative medicine. I mean, I remember the first time I took a class on preventative medicine was like on health psychology in the 90s. And they talked about that, how we're somehow little by little pushing that direction. But, you know, the conspiracy theories out there are like, pharmaceutical companies, there's money behind that. Lobbies are not interested in that. It's better for them to put money on treating you rather than preventing that you get sick, you know? Yeah. It is what it is.
Well, thank you. So we're about halfway through, a little more than halfway through our time with our participants today. And so I'm actually going to skip around from the questions that I sent to you guys, because I think in this time and in this pandemic, in this time of isolation and struggle and fear and anxiety, that I think this next line of questioning that I'm going to move us into, and we'll come back to some of the other questions if we have time, but is around, when should I call for when should I call for help? How do I know that it's time? So why don't we start, Joseph, with you? How do I know that it's time to call somebody? And who?
Right. We complete an assessment. We call it comprehensive clinical assessment here. It's usually done in major agencies, but I like to do it here because it allows me to understand the patient. And I spend like an hour or two with them asking questions like Franchon does. And one of the questions is, why now? Like, how come not, how come you didn't call me last week? Or how come you didn't think about this last month? Mm-hmm. And they think about it before, but that day, it's kind of like they were at the edge of like that decision. Like that's it, today is the day, I can take it anymore. And your body is the answer. Your body tells you when, in a way. It depends obviously on the symptoms. If it's anxiety, you might feel that you're dying every day, every time you have an episode, but this time it's kind of like enough. That's it. I need to find a way. And in some cases is vulnerability. In some cases it's family members tell them, I think you need help. For instance, if it's something related to the couple, a relationship, the partner is going to say, you need to go and get help. If it's something individual and they live alone, they're going to go and get it. If it's something related to substance abuse, the law might somehow force them. But if it's something like, they're completely unaware and they really don't know, sometimes the fear can get them there. And fortunately, we have medicine, we have doctors and providers who are now recognizing the importance of counseling and mental health. And, they go to the doctor and now they're seeing, the person says, I've been worrying or whatever, and they can refer them to us. And that's important, that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Franchon, what would you say to that question? How do I know when it's time to reach out?
So for healing your almond, it's never too early, right? So I work with people that have an employee of one, they're solopreneurs right now. And we're in the process of talking about what kind of things do you need to work through so that you can be more successful in your business. But then the next question is, what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of boss do you want to be? And what kind of environment do you want to set in the workplace? So it's never too early, really. But unfortunately, I get called for problems. I am a problem solver. I really wish somebody would call me and say, hey, things are going great, and I just want you to help continue, and I want you to help them go better. I have not yet reached life where I get those calls. I would say more recently, a lot of my calls have been around people completing suicide, and workplaces really wanting to support their employees and feeling overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. And they heard my name because I have a reputation for dealing with crisis. I have a reputation for dealing really well with trauma. Most people in Wilmington know that about me. If they know anything, that's the thing they know. Like if there's a huge problem, call Franchon. So I do get those phone calls. And I also get a lot of equity, diversity, and inclusion calls in terms of people are having difficult conversations in the workplace, and then they don't know what to do with that. And supervisors, oftentimes they're afraid, they don't know where to land and what to say. And there's all this kind of awkwardness. So really great supervisors are like, we need help. So they call me and they say, we don't know what to do. Can you please help us? And I'm like, sure. So if there is some tension or contention in the workplace, that's when you call me. If you have a sick feeling in your stomach when you go to work, you or your manager should be calling me to kind of talk about like, hey, we need help. We don't really know necessarily what we need help with, but I don't want to be here. And I think there's this idea, this concept of you're not supposed to like work. And I don't support that. That is not true. I have worked for amazing companies that have been wonderful, safe, amazing places that I, to this day, and still have great relationships with coworkers. And then I've been in places where I get that sick feeling on Monday. And if I get a sick feeling on Monday, I've got to figure out a way to move on because I'm not going to live my life like that. Because what ends up happening is Gretchen goes from, for me, Gretchen would go from it would be nice to go to acupuncture to now I have to go because I need her to balance out my energy so I can deal with Monday morning. Right. So that's kind of, and that, for me, that's what I would do. Like when I'm not doing well, I call someone like Dr. Gretchen. I don't go to a general practitioner. I've been going to mental health and acupuncture and chiropractic. That's my self-care. So the idea is if there's a sick feeling and it happens every once in a while, then okay, maybe we can let that be. But if you're once a week just feeling like nauseous and I don't want to be here, and I don't want to deal with this person and I just don't want to go to work, that's not normal. I know we normalize it in the United States, but it's not normal. That's an issue. So at that point, you call me directly, or you can go to your supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, go to your supervisor and say, hey, I heard about this thing. Can we at least get a consultation and kind of talk to her? Because maybe it's just me and one person, or maybe it's an organizational problem. We don't know. But yeah, I think your body really does tell you. I completely agree with what Joseph said. Your body tells you when something's not okay. And instead of pushing that to the side, we need to really bring it to the forefront and say, okay, I have a pain, I have a sick feeling, I have a nausea, I have a headache, something's going on. So let me try to figure out where that's happening. And then depending on where that's happening, like, is it only with family, or maybe it's a family problem? Maybe we need to go to Joseph and have a conversation about that. Is it all the time that I'm getting migraines? Okay, maybe we need to go to Gretchen because we don't want to be on medication. We want someone to actually figure out the problem. Or is it only on Monday mornings? Do we only get a stomach ache Sunday night when we're getting ready for work? All right, well, maybe we need to call Franchon and figure out how to make an environment a place where we want to be as opposed to a place that makes us nauseous. I know I answered for everybody, but I think we all do different amazing things. So I just
Sure.
wanted to throw that in there.
No, that was great. That was great. So Gretchen, is there anything you would add to the question, to the answers that
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's for people to not wait until they feel really bad, because it's so much easier to fix you, or I don't want to say fix you, but help you be better, because it's you that does the fixing. I just direct it. When you're not a hot mess, so when you're just a slightly warm biscuit instead of a burnt hot mess, it's because when you just are starting to feel off. So for several weeks ago, I was talking to my therapist, and she's like, "Are you okay? Like, really?" And I was like, "Well, yeah," because I've always been kind of like I've always worked on being okay. She's like, "I don't think you're okay." And then I started realizing all these weird feelings and all the stuff I was having, it was like a sign that I really wasn't okay. I had a lot of like sadness and grief, and all this stuff is not normal for me. And those of you that know me know I'm like, sad? Why am I feeling sad? What's wrong with me? And so I got a couple treatments from my other acupuncturist, Patrick. Started working really a lot harder on my self-care, and did something, started taking action towards working through those things, because I wasn't even really able to recognize them myself without help. So one of the things I would say is ask yourself, am I okay? And because if you're like most of us right now, the answer is probably no.
True.
This has not been a normal year. This has been very, very stressful I don't know if anybody hasn't been stressed by it, because you've either been killed by it, not literally, but like business wise, or you've gone kabonkers successful and crazy, and it's stressful either way. Yeah. So it's been just kind of think about times when you were really happy and felt good about life in itself and everything else inside, and then ask yourself how you're feeling in comparison to that. And if you're not there, that's the time to come in, because you don't want to wait until you're about to jump off the bridge or something.
Yeah, sure. That's
Sooner
great.
is always better than later, and it's also more cost effective.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take you as long to get well.
That's great advice as well. So I think Joseph mentioned it first, but I think the others of you mentioned that. So if you're with someone, and Gretchen, you just gave a great story about yourself when a coworker or someone said to you, "Hey, you're not okay." So so let's get back, Gretchen, to that, and let's say one of my coworkers thinks I'm not okay, and how would you coach someone to have that conversation? Maybe it's a boss, maybe it's a subordinate, maybe it's a spouse, but how would you coach someone so that the person who needs help might not turn them off?
Right. I think, because I gave some thought to this before our meeting, and I thought about how Corinne asked, and it was just kind of like, you would ask me, like, "Are you okay?" And if they're like, "Yeah." Like, no, really. Like, really. Because there's something, something seems a little off and I'm worried. I think just a genuine, caring asking, because that may be all it takes is to show that you care, that you've noticed that they don't seem themselves, and then listen to their, before you offer advice, like listen to their response. But I think letting people know that you see that they don't seem their normal self, it would be helpful. And then, directing them to, well, I just went to this great mental health thing, and these are the things that I learned. You don't even have to call it a mental health thing. I just learned all this really cool stuff.
Cool.
And maybe, Joseph could help you, or Gretchen can help you, or maybe Franchon can help our crazy boss, or whatever. But
that's what my team might be saying about me.
So, but I'm lucky in that we've developed a culture at our, that we check in regularly with a thing where, like, what do you feel like expressing? What's really going on with you? And so we work really hard at being honest. And at our last team meeting, probably more than half of the team were not feeling great, and they're just, they're struggling. And I'm like, okay, let's get in for a treatment. Let's get you on the table for massage. Let's do the things to help you feel better. And so I think that, and one of the other things that really helped me too was to just share that I wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think if people get the opportunity to share that they're not okay, that alone is healing in itself.
Franchon?
Yeah, I'm just over here nodding like, yes, Gretchen, yes, speak it. So I think for healing your almond services, it's a little difficult because it's very, very non-traditional. I've spent a lot of time trying to educate people about what it is that we do. So I think one of the things is kind of saying like, hey, how do you feel about Monday mornings? Or can you remember a time you were looking forward to coming to work? And if that was like 2018, we have a problem. You know, like if that's, and just to kind of ask to say like, hey, do you want to be here? Like, really? You know, and people are like, well, no. And they're like, okay, well, what would it take? You know, what would it take for you to want to be here? What would that look like? And kind of focusing on the end result of hiring a consultant, not the like big problem, right? Because nobody wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about the big problems, and that's fine. Put that on me. That's why I'm here. But you can talk about like, what would we like it to be like? What would it take to look forward to Monday morning? What would it take for you to be excited about coming to work again? What would that look like? And just ask people those questions. And then then they'll start thinking differently, because probably no one's ever asked that, right? So like, then they'll start thinking, well, it would be better if we had this, or maybe if I felt like I could talk to my supervisor, or maybe if my feelings were validated in a meeting, or maybe, you know, like kind of it gives you permission to dream. Mm-hmm. And then once they do that, you say, you know what, I went to this really great event and I met this person and I think that she might be able to help, or her company might be able to help. Let's just see, you know, like a lot of places do, you know, you can call and ask questions for free. I'm sure in Joseph's office and Dr. Gretchen's office, like you can call and ask questions. You can't be on the phone forever, but you can call and ask some questions and just kind of get an idea of what this is. And if you hear something you like, then book that appointment. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't, that's okay. But I think it's important of that framing of asking people, like, what, like, I have a headache every day. Okay. Can you remember a time you didn't? Do you want to continue to do that? Because, you know, I'm thinking acupuncture might be the thing for you. And just kind of talking about like, and just throwing it in there. Like, don't you want to be better? Like, you know, what would that look like? Because that dreaming thing makes people really open, as opposed to saying like, hey, I've noticed that you've just been a total jerk every day, you know, and like, I just don't want to be around you. That's really not the way to lead into this kind of conversation. Right. Because now they senses up and they're not hearing it. All of us, I struggle, and I have a team, and I'm like, listen, when I need feedback, give it to me. Like, give it to me. And I accept it, but that's because I have to do a lot of self-talk of like, all right, Franchon, sit here, be quiet, listen, like, think about it, come back. That's a process that I've had to go through because I've been in therapy for a very long time. So I know how to accept that feedback. But some of us are not a fan of that. So most of us aren't. So we really need to be mindful about how we're entering into these conversations, because the end goal is you want that person or that workplace to be better, right? So that's the goal. So kind of start with the goal in mind instead of starting with the problem.
Right. That's great. Thanks. Joseph, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great question, and I think it's great because I'm relatively new to the experience of how I recommend approaching this here in North Carolina, and because you know, if you ask this question in New York City, people are gonna be like, you know, mind your own business. Don't tell me what to do, right? You know, and here you have that, you know, friendship type of relationship in a work environment, where if somebody says something, they, you know, I never saw in New York City somebody putting their hands on somebody else's shoulder like I've seen it here, a coworker. I mean, don't touch me, basically, is what you have there. And here you have that, so you can, it facilitates telling a friend, you know, are you okay? And, you know, I'm noticing that, you know, you're feeling this way, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I think my recommendation will be, do it, you know, just tell them, you know, hey, you know, if you're okay, you know, you can go to a therapist or whatever, something like that, but do it in a way that is subtle. Don't insinuate that they have to go to a therapist, because people can be defensive and that can be rude. Like, you know, what makes you believe that things are not okay with me? And I think that the best way is that, you know, you show empathy, that you show that you're doing it because you care, that you show that you're doing it because you you want to make sure that if the person is struggling and they cannot make that decision themselves, that you just want to kind of, let them know that the help is available. It's kind of like when you give somebody, $1 to help, but you're not telling, hey, this is because of what you did, to just put it like under, like you just give it to him or her. And you're not really necessarily saying, here, I'm paying you for what you did. You just do it like, under. And I think that's the best way to approach this. You just tell them, here's a contact information if you ever need it. We do that here to some extent with individuals who have contemplated suicide, and talking about it is really difficult for both them and us. And when we tell them, call the suicide line, that can be kind of like too straightforward, and that can be kind of like taken us by surprise by them. So I feel that if you do see somebody, a coworker who is struggling, who is not doing okay, who is they're not having a good day, period, they yes, just tell them, is everything okay, just in case you need help, here's a contact number of a person that I know that could potentially help you if you need it.
Okay, thank you, guys. I really do think that your answers, all three of your answers, are really helpful in these times. We while we're all individually feeling the anxiety, the fear, et cetera, associated with the pandemic and the isolation and the failures that some of us feel like we're facing, that this language, if we know that we're feeling it ourselves, then the people around us likely are too. And so thank you for offering some of those words. I just wanted to check and make sure. Nope, I don't see anything in the chat. So we only have about 8 minutes left with our audience today. So if you have a question, put it in that chat box pretty quickly so that I can ask it. I'd really like to finish on what I think is a positive question, or at least it will lead to some positive answers from you all, and give those of us who might be watching, in order to gain some advice and counsel for ourselves or for family or friends. This could give us all that glimmer of hope, I think. And that the question is what are some common things your clients say when they feel like they've had success with you? So let's start, Franchon, with you.
So one of my favorites is I never knew. So like they'll say, I never knew, da 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 da, and it's some sort of educational thing or something about trauma that I've taught them, and they're just like, all these light bulbs go off because suddenly things make sense. So I never knew. I wanted to go to work. Like I've had people call me and say, guess what? I wanted to go to work today. It worked because I supervise a lot of different people in situations, domestic violence shelters, things like that. I've also had employees say to me, wow, they really do care. And that really, like, for my third shift people, I contract with a local company in Wilmington, and they're open 24 hours. So when I took the contract, I said, I want to be able to come to every shift. And they were like, yeah, if you want to show up here at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's fine with us. I said, okay. So every month I visit third shift. And third shift feels so taken care of. They're just like, they paid a mental health professional to come here at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, they think that's absolutely just amazing. And I'm like, of course they did. Like, of course. And that particular contract allows me access to all 500 employees. So they really feel taken care of. So to get that feedback of saying, wow, they really do care. I'm like, yes, they really do care. They struggle to show it, and we're working on that. But they really do care, because if they didn't, I'm not here for free. Like they're putting their money where their mouth is. So yeah, those would be the statements that just brighten up my day. And I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. We're doing good work.
Super. That's great. How about you, Joseph? What do some of your clients say when they feel like they've had success in their work with you?
The most common things are we detect commitment language and change talk. They you start seeing like, I wasn't doing this. I had not seen this way or that way. when you change, when you see that, when you hear that, you realize that there is self-understanding, this self-discovery, and that for the first time, the person is thinking, is processing what they had been thinking, and actually thinking about solutions. It's not anymore, you know, contemplation or denial or pre-contemplation, all these words that we use when it comes to, you know, the stages of change. But I think that, you know, hearing them saying for the first time something they had never, you know, said before is important. It shows you that, you know, what they're doing in the therapy session is helping them. When they, you know, when you can see that it's not only necessarily you. Most of the time, I don't really feel proud of, you know, that when they say that. It's more, wow, finally you are doing work for you. Because it's not, you know, they're gonna leave and eventually there's gonna be another person in that chair. But it's more like, you know, great, you know, the money you're spending here is worth it. But also, great, you know, I'm helping you find purpose and meaning in life, which is what at the end of the day matters. Or, you know.
That's great.
So.
Thank you. And Gretchen?
I guess the first thing is people are like, I feel better. You know, I'm just feeling so much better. I'm not having panic attacks anymore, or my heart's not racing all the time, or I feel happier. You know, those are some of the things that they say. And it's just and so often a lot of it's more subtle, because I'll ask them when they come in, and so how'd you do over the last week? And they have to think, like, oh, because what happens is the absence of things, the absence of pain, the absence of sorrow and those things, as they get filled up with normal life, you forget how bad it was. So when you check in with someone, like, when you first started, you know, your pain was like an 8 out of 10, or you know, you were crying every single day. How are you doing? And as they get better, sometimes it's so subtle, they don't even realize how much better they are until you tell them how they were when they got there.
Right.
And then they look back and they're like, oh yeah, I can't believe how much better, how different I feel. And they feel human again, and like they can connect with people, and they don't feel as bereft and sad and anxious, and they have joy. Because one of the points that we do, that I do is I tell them, like, it's a heart point. I'm like, this point will help you find your joy. Because I tell the emotion that goes with each point that I do in this emotional treatment, and they connect with that. And then when next time they come back in, they can tell the difference in how they're feeling. And it often affects their stomach's better, you know, their digestion's better, their sleep is better, you know, all those things they're all intertwined. So it's good.
They are all intertwined. That's a great phrase to end our time together today. I really want to thank you, Gretchen, Franchon, and Joseph, for joining us today and sharing just a little bit about what you do and what you can offer to improve the mental health of our community, our businesses. Encourage those of you who were with us, who joined us, to take what you've learned and apply it to yourself and to those around you, to ensure that, as Gretchen said, it's all intertwined, and we can be better all around if we're taking care of ourselves. And self-care, Franchon, that was your phrase, and I love that one as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, Piedmont Natural Gas, Cloudwise, and Warden Smith. They are, again, a long list of investors in the chamber without whom we could not do the work that we do in ensuring that we are promoting prosperity for our community by encouraging business growth. So I hope everyone has a fabulous Thanksgiving holiday, and that you are able to reflect and be thankful for all those around you. And I know that I am. I'm thankful for you all today. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Natalie. Thanks,
you.
Joseph. Bye, Franchon.
Thank you.